One of the key decisions that pre-retirees need to make is, what withdrawal frequency should I use, and does it matter? At its most basic, you have to decide the cadence for withdrawals to pay your bills and fund your travels. Monthly, quarterly, annually. As with any aspect of retirement, the first and most natural question is, does it affect success rates? We will look at 4 studies from 1999 to 2026, written by prominent academics and practitioners, that attempt to answer this question. But is retirement more than just success rates? Stick around to the end. If you find topics like this helpful, take a moment to like and subscribe for future content. Your support is very much appreciated. I think there are other aspects that we should take into account when deciding this cadence, and they have nothing to do with success rates. In fact, I'd argue that some of these are more important. After all, we are not spreadsheets or Monte Carlo simulations. Or at least I hope so. For example, does one increase or mitigate timing risk? Does one inherently involve more effort to execute? Does it help to have a familiar income cadence? And finally, which is better aligned with spending patterns? And does this even matter? 4 studies from 1998 to 2026 look at success rates, amongst other things. First, Cooley, Hubbard and Waltz published 2 peer-reviewed papers in 1998 and 1999, the 1998 being the famed Trinity Study. Second, Horan's 2024 peer-reviewed paper, published in the Financial Planning Review. Third, Jeska's 2021 blog, published on Early Retirement Now. Finally, Vic's blog on withdrawal frequency, last updated in 2026. I'll leave links to all articles in the description for those interested. Cooley, Hubbard and Waltz published 2 papers. The 1998 paper focused on annual withdrawals, while the 1999 looked at monthly withdrawals. They considered a number of asset allocations, but the ones most practical in my opinion are 75-25 and 50-50. It won't be a surprise to regular viewers that I have a preference for the 75-25 or 70-30, since this affords around 7.5 years of spending in fixed income. Unsurprisingly, 75-25 outperforms 50-50 across the 3 withdrawal rates. They found little difference between monthly and annual, up to 8%, but after that, annual withdrawals have a very slight edge. Using data from 1926 to 1997, at 4% and 8%, monthly has a slight edge over annual, but at 6% annual has an edge. Personally, I'd be concerned about adopting a fixed 8% withdrawal rate through a 30 or 40-year retirement, so I don't think I'd lose much sleep over that particular academic detail. Within the range of sensible withdrawal rate, the Trinity Study team found that there is little to choose between monthly and annual withdrawals. Now let's move to Horan's more recent 2024 study, where he evaluated the outcomes for a range of different cadences. He used Monte Carlo simulations and simulated market returns using a range of different methods, from random walk to historical returns in both original and randomized sequences. His conclusion was that withdrawal frequency made very little difference to outcomes. Whether you measure failure rates or ending portfolio values, the results were virtually identical across cadences when he applied what he calls duration-matched withdrawals. Using random walk returns as an example, he considered, when you applied the duration-matched withdrawal frequencies, which you can see highlighted in the right table, the outcomes were virtually identical across the different cadences at 7.9%. This is in contrast to the duration-mismatched withdrawals, when you take your annual withdrawals right at the end of the year, but the difference is marginal, at only 0.7% for random walk. So what is this business with duration matching? In this approach, you take your annual withdrawal on the 1st of July. Horan's model involves spacing out the withdrawals evenly through the year, so that, on average, your capital remains invested for a similar amount of time regardless of cadence. We'll revisit this a little later, but for now Horan's conclusion is clear: there is virtually no difference. Let's turn to Jeska, who addresses this question in part 47 on Early Retirement Now. He looked at a number of aspects, from inflation-adjusted final net worth, both average and median, to probabilities of successfully ending with zero net wealth, and failure rates for different withdrawal rates. Let's look at a subset of his results. While Jeska does note that the differences are small for a 30-year horizon, monthly withdrawals clearly have a slight edge over annual withdrawals. The data tells us that fewer cohorts failed, 1.5% for monthly to 2.4% for annual, a difference of just under 1%. Monthly also saw fewer cohorts ending with less than the initial net worth, 29.6 to 31.7%, so a 2.1% difference. When CAPE was high, 3.1% fewer failed using monthly withdrawals at 10.85%, compared to annual at 13.95%. We continue to observe that there is little difference between the two, but Jeska's results slightly favor monthly withdrawals. That brings us to Baptiste Vicht, better known as the Poor Swiss. His blog on frequency of portfolio withdrawals has been running since April 2021, recently updated on the 13th of January 2026. He looked at success rates over 30, 40 and 60-year retirement horizons and tested withdrawal frequencies from 1 month all the way to 24 months. The relative change looks very similar, but this is simply due to the scale for the success rates being different for the 3 different charts. The most obvious observation is, portfolios with higher equity allocation had higher success rates, as you'd expect. If we put the averages across all asset allocations in a chart, the differences become more apparent. The results were remarkably similar to Jeska's for the 30-year horizon, where annual withdrawals reduced the average success rate relative to monthly withdrawals by just under 1%. This is closely aligned with Jeska's results, with only 0.9% difference between the two. The penalty doubles for 24 months, at 2%. You see similar patterns for 40 and 60-year horizons. The results favor monthly withdrawals the longer the retirement, as your investments are exposed to greater time in the market, compounded over a longer period. So when we're talking about 1.5% difference over a 40-year retirement, I'd say that qualifies as negligible, especially when you take into consideration these simulations are based on fixed withdrawal rates. If you followed my channel, you'll know my thoughts on the 4% rule and fixed withdrawal rates in general. They are just not realistic. Real life does not follow a rigid inflation-adjusted line. When you pay off your mortgage or start taking your state pension, this reduces your withdrawal rate significantly. Jeska's and Vicht's findings show a very clear trend. Monthly withdrawals have a slight edge over annual withdrawals. Vicht further found that the advantage increased the longer the retirement. However, Horan found the contrary. As we saw earlier, there is virtually no difference between the two when you adopt duration-matched withdrawals. This is the random walk from his paper. The success rates, or failure rates, as he has modeled it, is the same across all 4 withdrawal scenarios. While this may be mathematically correct, there's an elephant in the room. If you retire on the 1st of January, and your annual withdrawal is scheduled for the 1st of July, what are you living on for those first 6 months? You will have to withdraw from the portfolio. There is no free lunch. This one change aligns Horan's annual withdrawal cadence with Jeska and Vicht, which I'd expect will negate the artificial advantage of modeling annual withdrawals on the 1st of July. Of course, this also applies to all the other withdrawal cadences for the first year of retirement. All the papers agree on one thing: when considering withdrawal frequency, time in the market is the key factor influencing success. Put another way, you want to minimize cash drag. Sounds familiar? And it is comforting that the differences between monthly and annual withdrawals are small. That frees us to focus on the bigger levers: withdrawal rate, asset allocation, asset location, spending flexibility, and dynamic withdrawal strategies. The optimal withdrawal frequency is the one that minimizes friction and aligns best with your spending cadence. Success rates don't really factor into it unless you are planning a longer retirement horizon. So what are the key considerations when deciding between the two? Effort isn't a consideration. The two are evenly matched. Success rates? Pretty similar again, with a nod towards monthly withdrawals for longer retirements. Annual withdrawals are more susceptible to timing risk, since you make this decision only once, as opposed to spreading the risk through the year. The last two are all about minimizing friction with your spending cadence, and I see them as two sides of the same coin. One relates to income, and the other spending. Monthly withdrawals are more familiar and natural, and align better with how we budget, spend, and track expenses. If you prefer annual withdrawals, you could achieve a similar outcome using a transfer or holding account that sits between your investment and spending accounts. A middle ground that I think makes sense is quarterly withdrawals. My personal preference is to start with monthly retirements in the early years, which makes it more natural to keep an eye on my budget and expenses, switching to quarterly withdrawals after 5 to 10 years. Which approach are you adopting, or thinking of adopting? Let me know in the comments. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me today. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.